All right. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. I first wanted to just start by welcoming our newest board member, Christy Pulowski. Congratulations and welcome. Thank you. Today, we are going to go a little bit out of, we need to call a quorum.
Dr. Polfino?
Present.
Dr. Grant?
Present.
Dr. Nolan?
Present.
Dr. Nolan, would you mind reading off the location you're participating from?
Yes, I'm at Cal Poly State University, 1 Grand Avenue, Building 57A, which is the Veterinary Hospital Annex.
Thank you. Ms. Pulaski? Present. Ms. Prado?
Here.
Ms. Prado, would you mind reading the location you're participating from?
Yes, I am at the Mission Viejo Public Library in the Bill Price Conference Center at 100 Civic Center, Mission Viejo, California, 92691.
Thank you. Ms. Berber is absent today. Dr. Bradbury?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Sorry about that. So I just wanted to let everyone know that we're going to go a little bit out of order today. We're going to start with public comment and then move on to agenda items 4 and 5, and then come back to agenda item 3 due to various time constraints for some of the participants. So first of all, we are going to move to agenda item 2, and I just wanted to say before we open public comment on matters not on the agenda, I would like to remind individuals making comments not to discuss pending complaints, pending licensing applications, or pending disciplinary actions that may later come before the board for a decision. Additionally, please be aware that public comment during this agenda item should provide information to the board members, but it is not a discussion between the board members and the public. The only action board members can take during and after public comment is to listen to comments and decide whether they want a future agenda item on the topic. Though this may seem at times like the board members are not being responsive, following these guidelines is critical to ensure the rules of the Open Meeting Act are followed to avoid compromising the speaker's goals or the board's mission. In the interest of time, as we have done in the past, public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. We would like to request that public comments not repeat statements made by prior commenter. If you are in support of a statement made by a prior individual and your comments have already been made, please just state your name or association and your support for the previous commenter. Legislative hearings regularly use this practice as it is a good way to ensure that we can hear from everyone today. So let's go ahead and move to public comment. Is there any public comment in the room? Seeing none, moderator, can you please open it up to public comment online?
Thank you, Madam President. And I have opened up the question and answer panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type comment or simply raise your hand. And I'd like to check with our other physical locations first while people access the Q&A panel. So at the Cal Poly location, do we have any public comment?
There is no public present at the time.
Thank you. And I will be repeating that question throughout because, as we all know, sometimes people join the meeting later. So I haven't lost my mind. It's just I have to keep repeating that. And then at our public library location, do we have any public there?
Public and no public comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just a reminder, I will be timing public comment. You'll have 3 minutes. I will give you a 15-second reminder. And I do see that Karen Atlas has a comment. So Karen, just a moment, I'll find you. And Karen, you should see a prompt to unmute yourself. Go ahead and click on that. Perfect, you're unmuted.
Very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. At the April 19th, 2023 Veterinary Medical Board meeting, the board president read a statement into public record alleging that I have repeatedly been spreading misinformation in communications made in connection with AB 814 and the issue of animal physical rehabilitation. The statement was made immediately prior to the board voting on a position to AB 814, leaving no opportunity for any clarification of the record. The statement ended declaring, quote, "This repeated misinformation presented by Ms. Atlas seems disingenuous and is misleading to the public and the legislators to whom this information is being presented," unquote. The board president's statement defames my good character, and this libelous statement cannot stand unchallenged, and I request to read a correction into public record. The APTC has submitted a letter for distribution to the board members and the public at this meeting on this issue, and I will not read that letter here. However, I will gladly share the letter with anyone who does not have a copy. The board president's characterization stems from statements made by the Animal Physical Therapy Coalition that the promulgation of the board's APR regulations, which became effective January 1st, 2022, quote, "reduced access to rehab care for animals by making it more difficult for qualified physical therapists to provide essential animal physical rehab services in California," unquote, and that the regulation, quote, "significantly changed the status quo and made access to animal rehab services even worse," unquote. The board president further stated, quote, "prior to CCR section 2038.5, a physical therapist who is not licensed veterinarian or RVT could administer APR treatment to an animal as a veterinary assistant and only at the direction and under the direct supervision of a licensed veterinarian. CCR section 2038.5 did not change this," unquote. This simply is incorrect. Historically, it was understood that prior to the regulation that APR was not defined in the California statute or board regulation, and APR was allowed to be performed by those who did not hold a veterinary license at the supervision of level determined by the veterinarian, whether that be direct or indirect supervision. The board president claimed that the regulation changed nothing, when in fact it did, because the regulation defined APR, which was not previously explicitly defined or otherwise specified in California law. Furthermore, the regulation changed the supervision level and allowed indirect or direct supervision for RVTs, but required direct
15
supervision
seconds.
for everyone else. That was specifically the change that put previously existing and legal practices out of compliance as of January 1st. Because of this change, my practice and others would no longer be in compliance.
I'm sorry, her time was up, so we'll move on to the next comment, which is from Andre Tarasov. And Andre, one moment while I find you. All right, Andre, you should see a prompt to unmute yourself. Go ahead and click on that. There you go, you're unmuted.
Hello, thanks for letting me talk to you. I would like to bring an issue for foreign veterinary certification to this board. The AVMA created the Educational Commission of Foreign Veterinary Graduates in 1971 with the main objective to evaluate the professional competence of graduates of non-AVMA Council of Education accredited colleges of veterinary medicine listed by AVMA, to the benefits of such graduates and to the state and provincial veterinary licenses agencies, and to the other concerned parties. Because the AVMA listed state boards as a stakeholder of a CFEG, I would like you to be aware about issues that foreign veterinarian graduates have with the AVMA certification program. As you know, we have significant shortage of veterinarians, and at the same time, we have several hundred foreign trained veterinarians that are systemically delayed by AVMA. I completed the CFEG certification in 2008, and 2019 I was recommended by Arizona AVMA and was appointed to a CFEG commission. While attending the meetings, I repeatedly heard the same issues that I was having as a candidate, and they were not addressed for several decades. And many states currently are understanding insufficiency of AVMA, and they amended their Veterinary Practice Act to allow foreign graduates to practice under direct supervision of licensed veterinarian. And those states are Nevada, Tennessee, Kentucky, Massachusetts, Utah is in discussion of that. So I would like to ask this board to put this item on the future agenda. Thanks.
All right, this is the moderator, and I see no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I missed Andre's last name, but if the last commenter, Tarasov, sorry, Dr. Tarasov, if he would not mind emailing us at vmb.ca.gov. Is there, sorry, vmb@ca.gov, all of the information so that we can start researching that further.
Sorry, I apologize. vmb@dca.ca.gov.
My apologies. Okay, but we would like to get some of that information to look into that further. So thank you all for your public comments. So we are going to move on, skipping agenda item 3, onto agenda item 4, report and update from Department of Consumer Affairs.
This is, oh,
Hello and good morning. Can you hear me? Not good. Hello and good morning, President Bradbury, Vice President Solicito, Executive Officer Stieferman, and members of the board. I'm Melissa Geer, Deputy Director for Board and Bureau Relations, and I appreciate the opportunity to share the Department of Consumer Affairs update this morning. Before I get started, I would like to take a moment to congratulate and welcome Christy Pulowski to the board. You're welcome. I have several updates and reminders to share, starting with an update on DCA's DEI efforts. On May 12, 2023, DCA's DEI Steering Committee held its quarterly meeting in person and elected Chairperson Yafana Lamar, who is currently serving on the department's tribal liaison and as its chief of legislation for the Contractor State License Board, and Vice Chairperson Paul Sanchez, who is the executive officer of the Speech Language Pathology and Audiology Board. The committee discussed training strategic planning and DEI activities through the end of the calendar year. Providing employees access to DEI training is a priority for the DEI Steering Committee. In June, DCA began offering 3 DEI courses, which are available to all DCA employees. The courses are Understanding the Value of DEI in the Workplace, How to Decode Our Unconscious Bias, and Unleash the Power of Generational Differences. We are pleased to report that the response from employees interested to participate in these new DEI learning opportunities has been significant, with high registration and attendance numbers. We expect the numbers of participants to increase and that additional courses will be offered in the coming months. I look forward to updating you in the months ahead on the progress of the DEI Steering Committee. Also, to further the department's efforts to reach Californians we serve, DCA will request boards and bureaus translate any press releases issued into Spanish. California's top non-English language spoken is Spanish, and establishing a standard of translating releases into both English and Spanish will enhance the reach of information released. Boards and bureaus are also encouraged to evaluate any additional languages outside of Spanish that may serve their audiences. For additional information, please contact Board of Bureau Relations. Next, as many of you may know, the changes to the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act that allowed board members to not have to participate or have to notice their meeting location or meet in an ADA accessible location expired on July 1st. As a result, public meetings are subject to the traditional pre-COVID requirements for open meetings. DCA boards and bureaus should be prepared to conduct public meetings compliant with the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. This includes whether a meeting is held at a single centralized location or at multiple teleconference locations. Each physical meeting location will need to be identified in the meeting's public notices and agendas. Board members must attend meetings in person at the noticed meeting locations. All noticed meeting locations, including locations where a single board member will be, must be ADA accessible, have an agenda posted, and be open to the public. The public will be permitted to attend meetings at any noticed meeting location. Additionally, members of the public need to be able to hear the meeting and participate in public comment from each location. DCA has a Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act guide available and has provided your executive officer with a list of available meeting locations throughout the state. Please reach out to Board and Bureau Relations with any questions or concerns. DCA is committed to helping the board to ensure this is a smooth transition. Also, SB 544, which may allow for some meetings to be held without noticing the location of the board member, thus allowing remote virtual meetings, is still going through the legislative process, and the Department's Division of Legislative Affairs is working with stakeholders and providing updates to the boards and bureaus on the status of the bill. In addition, I have 2 project updates to share, the first being the Enlightened Enforcement Project and the second, the Data Governance Project. On July 21st, DCA will attend the 3rd walkthrough session for the Enlightened Enforcement Project that has been piloted by the Dental Board of California. The walkthrough session will cover citations, discipline, and probation processes. The project aims to learn best practices between boards to improve efficiency and standardize procedures for all boards and bureaus. Regarding the Data Governance Project, DCA is continuing its efforts to improve its reports regarding licensing and enforcement activities. The director recently led multiple workgroup meetings beginning in late April through early July with staff from each board and bureau to update the data metrics reported in DCA's annual report. DCA's goal is to ensure consistency where we report data, such as our annual report, DCA's data portal, and board and bureau sunset reports. Future meetings are expected in August and ongoing to help build new reports or modify existing ones to provide these new metrics for next year's annual report. Additionally, DCA held a meeting on July 17th with all boards and bureaus to review guidance on how boards and bureaus can compile and report data to the department for inclusion in this year's upcoming annual report. The department has asked all boards and bureaus to provide their annual report data by Friday, August 4th. If extensions are needed, please contact DCA's executive office. The following are a few reminders that you may find helpful. First, board members who have been appointed and reappointed can begin their service or perform any official, begin their service or perform any official functions without first taking the oath of office. Unless otherwise provided, the oath may be taken before any officer authorized to administer oaths. Board members should contact their executive officer to arrange taking the oath. Board members will be required to complete the documents listed on the board member appointment checklist, or HR 5, and return them to the Office of Human Resources before assuming duties, but no less than 30 days after their appointment or reappointment. Duties cannot be assumed and appointments cannot be processed until documents are received and are accurately completed. Incomplete packets may delay per diem payments and travel reimbursements due to the member. Second, there are 2 DCA-wide mandatory trainings for 2023. This includes sexual harassment prevention training and information security awareness. All DCA employees and appointees, including board members, will need to complete the sexual harassment prevention training this year. Board members must take the 2-hour supervisory training, and advisory council members must take the 1-hour non-supervisory training. This training is required every odd-numbered year and is online, self-paced in approximately 2 hours. Both the sexual harassment prevention training and information security awareness training are available on the department's learning management system. If board members need assistance in accessing LMS and these trainings, please reach out to Board and Bureau Relations. Third, Keep in mind that all state travel arrangements must be made through DCA's authorized travel agency, Cal's Travel Store, or Concur. When traveling by air on official state business, all board members and staff must use the most economical fares possible. If a flight is changed, there may be additional charges. Flight changes for personal conveniences are not permitted or justified, and the traveler is responsible for any associated changes. Please contact BBR if you have any travel questions. Lastly, board members must complete BMONT within 1 year of their appointment or reappointment on October 10th, 2023. BMONT will be offered virtually. This will be the last meeting of the year. Members can register for this training via LMS. Excuse me. And as I close, thank you again for this opportunity, and I welcome any questions from the board.
Thank you very much. Great to see you. I have one question. I think we asked you this before, but just I couldn't remember. We can take the DEI courses as well if we want to. Is that correct?
So board members at this time, the trainings aren't right now. The trainings that we just mentioned are for DCA employees, but in the future we will have training courses that board members can also participate in.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the board? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Melissa. Just to clarify, you said that you emailed me locations throughout the state. Well, there might be other meeting places throughout the state, but it's my understanding that they aren't able to do hybrid sessions like we are here in HQ1. Is that correct?
Correct. There are a few locations on the list that you received that may be able to. It's just case by case. We have to.
But yeah, so it's my understanding that it's not set up yet to do any other. So if we were to go to a different location, we would not be able to do this hybrid session, which means there'd be less public participation. So until we can confirm that there's a location where we can offer hybrid, I would recommend that we stay in Sacramento and do the hybrid.
I don't see any hands from board members online, so I think we'll open this up to public comment. Any public comment in the room? None here. Moderator, can you check online, please?
Thank you, Madam President. I've opened up the Q&A panel, and if any member of the public, or pardon me, I thought I opened it up. Let me do that real quick. All right. So if any member of the public has a comment to make, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, or you may simply raise your hand. For users that have called in, that's simply pressing *3. Otherwise, if you're logged in, you can click on the hand next to your name. Let's first check our Cal Poly location. Do we have any public comment there?
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you. And our public library location, do we have any public comment at Mission Viejo?
No.
No comment? Okay, thank you. All right. And I am not seeing any requests for comment in the Q&A. Let me check real fast for hands. I see no hands, so I see no requests for public comment. Shall I close the Q&A?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right, thank you so much.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item number 5, which is update discussion and possible action on National Association involvement. 5A is our former board president, Dr. Nunez, giving us an overview of the AAVSP.
Hello, can you see me? Can you see me and hear me? See me and hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So everyone's camera is off, so I can't see who's here. But hi, just giving you an update on the activities of the AVSB. Our last board of directors meetings was held in the lovely city of Vail, Colorado. That was the June meeting, June 9th and 10th. The July meeting is going to be today on Zoom at 11 o'clock. And the next in-person meeting is going to be in September, September 17th in Kansas City, in conjunction with our annual convention and meeting there. Couple of things that have been going on as part of our strategic agenda. The AAVSB is being more proactive about reaching out to member boards to listen, to find out what the needs are of our boards, of our member boards. And Jim Penrod, our CEO, has taken the lead to attend board meetings, and all of the board members are encouraged to join him at those board meetings when availability allows. Recently, North Carolina, Wyoming, and Florida have been member boards that have been that we've attended, and I believe that Jim's going to be at California's meeting next month. Going to be there virtually, and so any concerns, just raise your voices. Another process that we're doing is what's referred to as our strategic program analysis. We began to review all the programs and services offered by the AVSB through a process that assesses them in three main areas. Number one, the program attractiveness. Is this a program that AVSB wants to put resources into? Our competitive position. Are we in a strong position to put the resources into it and to support it? And number three, alternative coverage, other organizations that perhaps are in a better position to do this. The actual process of accomplishing this task was originally developed by the Wharton Business School and was a little bit above my pay grade to understand the charts and the numbers and the algorithms and so forth. But it really took a deep dive into these programs that AVSB offers to find out if it's really serving the needs of our member boards. At the Vail meeting, the thought was to do all of the programs and services, but we realized very quickly that we weren't going to have time to do that. So we started out with two programs. The first was the PAVE for veterinarians and also the PAVE for veterinary technicians. As you know, AVMA offers a similar program called the ECFEG, which is the Educational Commission for Foreign Graduates. And the main difference between the two programs is the program offered by AAVSB, which is PAVE, has a year of clinical educational rotations at an accredited veterinary school, whereas the AVMA's ECFEG, so many letters, has a clinical proficiency examination instead of that year of rotation. A lot of the applicants that are going through the process find that year of clinical rotations challenging economically, because basically they have to go back to school for a year and typically not have a job to support themselves. So the other program that was evaluated was the VALT program. Part of the VALT program is also the Veterinary Care Elite program. VALT is a program that transfers exam scores and out-of-state license information to member boards when the veterinarian or the registered veterinary technician moves to a new state. The Veterinary Care Elite program promotes those registered veterinary technicians that have not only met their educational and regulatory requirements to practice, but have also not had any disciplinary actions and have maintained a higher number of CE hours than is required. So it's sort of a marketing tool for the applicant, the RVT, to just establish themselves and be recognized as the best of our best. When we punched into all the numbers and answered all the questions, these programs scored a little bit lower in the area of program attractiveness and competitive positions. Member boards were struggling to find out the value of it if they're already doing all those things for themselves anyways. So that program is probably going to need a little bit more revising. Dr. Vinette and Dr. Sullivan are members of our task force, the regulatory task force, and they're going to be presenting some new model regulations. The model regulations are meant to support statutory language that can be found in the AAVSB Practice Act model, the PAM. So I won't take their thunder away from them, but I do want to let you know that there's also been some edits to the Practice Act model, and I don't know if that's been on the agenda for the California board or the MDC. But the edits that have been made, you can find them by going to the aavsb.org webpage and click the tab that says Board Services. And when you get to that page, there'll be a heading that is entitled Board Resources. And under that heading, click the link to the Practice Act model. And then you can see the whole entire PAM and all the edits that have been made, and also some comments that are put in by the regulatory task force. And it's a big document, and I know that you're not going to have another board meeting before our board meeting in Kansas City. And during that meeting, there's going to be an opportunity for member boards to provide feedback to the edits that have been made to the PAM. So be prepared. A vast majority of it, I don't think it needs to be gone over with a fine-tooth comb, because the nitty-gritty of language that regulates the practice of veterinary medicine is pretty straightforward, and there's a lot of consensus to what's in our Practice Act and in what's in the PAM. But I would like the board to just be thinking about the implications of what the PAM is, because we do have a history of the Practice Act model being used as referred to as the gold standard of Practice Acts, and that that's how the California board should comply. In some areas, we're in agreement with that, and in some areas, we're not. And I think that there could be some improvements in the introduction of the Practice Act model, which talks about how the Practice Act model should be used and should not be used. So in your responses that you're going to give to these edits in Kansas City, I would encourage you to put some forethought into that. In other news, Quebec has applied and has been accepted as the new member board. So welcome, Quebec. If there's any Quebecians in the audience, welcome. At the annual meeting in Kansas City, we are also going to have elections for officers and board positions. The position that I'm currently in is only a one-year term, so which means that I'm up for re-election again. All the open positions have a nominee for them. There's one nominee for the position of president. There are 6 nominees for 3 open director positions. There's one nominee for the nominating committee and one nominee for the ICVA representative position. So I know that I hope that the representatives that are attending will vote for me. If you do, I appreciate it and I'm honored. But Jessica is my campaign manager again. And if you know any people in any other states, I'd appreciate a kind word for my election. Also, on another agenda item, you're going to be talking about the VTNE eligibility requirements, possibility of rescinding the requirement that the applicants need to have graduated from an RVT program. You all will be discussing that, and I'll be here for just a little bit longer if you have any questions on that. And that's my report.
Thank you, Dr. Nunez. So yeah, it's kind of news to us here that there are edits to the Practice Act model regulations, the PAM. And I don't think we are gonna have, time here. Well, it's not agendized, so we don't have the ability to read those
Right.
and, comment on them as a board. Right, pardon?
No, they're not.
No, this is different than what we're looking at. So I think in the past, what we've done under these circumstances, and there also will be other things that come up at the AAVSB meeting that we'll have to potentially comment on and such. I think, is there a way to give the executive team sort of have the board vote to give the executive team the ability to act on behalf of the board, or how should we do that, Jessica?
Yeah, I think in the past you've had a motion that a board member makes to delegate to the executive team to act on behalf of the board to share the board's viewpoint in any discussions that the board has on any of the items during the conference.
Okay. We maybe have a motion for that. I will make a motion for that.
Can I ask a question? I don't know when to.
Yeah.
The meeting is in Kansas City, Missouri. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know about you guys. I just got an email that the state is now forbidding travel to Missouri as of August 28th, 2023. Has anyone seen that notice from the governor's office?
Yeah, I can update you on that. So I did get the notification, just so the members know, we were previously approved for clear members to go to the annual conference just like prior to Missouri being added. We were told that effective August of this year, Missouri is now on the banned states list, along with 2 other states that were just added. So now there's another process I have to go through, more paperwork to complete to try to get an exception to allow us to attend. Remember, the last year's meeting was also at a banned state, but with all the paperwork that we got through with the assistance of DCA, we were able to attend. So we'll be doing that paperwork again.
What did Missouri do now? Who knows?
For the record, we need a little bit more clarity on the motion. What I understand is that the motion is to delegate the board's position on the AAVSB items that are presented in the meeting materials. Is that correct?
Not in this meeting material, because they're not in here. So it would be anything that's discussed during the annual conference that the board has already discussed and had taken positions on, or has had conversations about. So they would be able to share that feedback that the board has already had.
Okay. And we're missing a second.
Okay. So is there any other discussion among the board? Ms. Prado, or?
I
Yes, Dr.
apologize.
Nolan.
I can't seem to find my hand. I'm looking, but anyway, I just to clarify, I think Dr. Nunez was asking that the board or via the executive committee look very closely at the PAM. Is that right, Dr. Nunez? I
encourage you to read the edits to not only the model regulations that are going to be presented, but also the edits to the Practice Act model.
Okay.
Because at the meeting, there's going to be an opportunity to provide feedback to the edits that have been made. And I think the intention of the motion is that as discussion occurs, there may be times when a vote's taken or a poll is taken to see what California's position is on any of these subjects. And I just in the past, we've just kind of given authority of the team that goes there to make those votes on behalf of the California board.
Right. So I would just like to, if according to Tara, maybe if we want to give a little more specificity to the motion, we could mention the Practice Act model or the PAM.
That's fair, yeah. So you can't vote on anything.
I think that's a good idea. Do you accept that amendment? I accept that amendment.
I accept as well.
Okay, so let's be clear. All right, I think the motion is to delegate to the executive committee authority to provide the board positions on AAVSB meeting items, including practice act model.
I would add,
Yes.
I would add model regulations
Oh.
there too. Practice act
Yeah.
model and model
And model.
regulations.
Yes, I accept.
Yes.
All right. Okay, any other comments from the board online? I don't see hands. Okay, so we'll open it up to public comment in the room. Any public comment in the room? No, moderator, can you open it up online?
Thank you, Madam President. I've opened up the question and answer panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, or you may simply raise your hand. And while we give you a moment to do that, let's check our Cal Poly location. Any public comment?
No.
Thank you. And how about our public library?
No public comment.
Thank you. All right. And I am not seeing any comment from our online participants. So shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's closed.
Okay, we can call for a vote.
Dr. Solcito?
Yes.
Dr. Grant?
Yes.
Dr. Nolan?
Yes.
Ms. Polanski?
Yes.
Ms. Potter?
Yes.
Dr. Godfrey?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Nunez. I really appreciate the work you're doing and taking the time today to come and present that. And I'll be one of your hype people in Missouri if I'm allowed to go.
Yeah, and you know, and for any board members, if as you're reading the practice act model, I'm available if you'd like to call me and ask questions. I'd be happy to answer them to my best of my ability. Hi Beth, hi Richard. I hope I could stay to help you with your presentation, but I have to go now. But you all are in good hands.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, so we'll be moving on now to agenda item 5B, AAVSB new model regulations. Dr. Bennett and Dr. Sullivan.
Glad to see everybody, even though it's from a distance. I guess I will start. I want to probably kind of turn some of the comments over to Dr. Bennett while we go through this. And I am sure that everyone has read all three documents. I'll just kind of give you a preface of where I fit into this. I'm a member of the regulatory task force for AAVSB. And last fall, we broke up into some subcommittees, and one was a 5-year review of the guidelines to telemedicine that AAVSB has had. And I thought it was a great time to relook at this document, since we definitely had some new information. We had some clarification as to why the American Telehealth Association had guidelines that prohibited or discouraged physical examination of infants under 2 years of age. We had an explanation of why that was, and I felt that there was definitely some correlations to human medicine. We also had the Access to Care Coalition report that defined the needs of the underserved, and the fact that none of them are satisfied by telemedicine. And we had some more new information, and I thought that would be a good opportunity to review this and maybe update the guidelines. The first time, I mean, anytime I go to a meeting, especially a committee meeting, the first thing I do is I start counting votes. And the subcommittee was a relatively small group, but there were 2 new people added to it that had not been on our regulatory committee before, that were very pro telemedicine, virtual telemedicine. And so right away I counted the votes, and I knew I wasn't going to get very far. So, but it was a good review. I mean, I stuck through it. I wasn't able to attend the last meeting, at least part of it, where much of this was approved. But you know, the votes were already there, so that wasn't critical. So with that background, I personally didn't get much accomplished, but I did learn along the way a lot of good information. And so I think before that we start reviewing the 3 documents that you have, I'd like to introduce Dr. Bennett, who was the staff person on our regulatory committee. And if you think herding cats was difficult, I would like to envision herding cats with 2 golden retriever puppies in the midst of them would be more likely a description of her job. She did an excellent job at it, but it was very, very difficult. So I'd like everybody to meet Beth.
Thank you. That's the best description of my job I've ever heard. So thank you. I am the staff liaison for the Regulatory Policy Task Force for the American Association of Veterinary State Boards. I'm also their Chief Veterinary Officer. You can see my credentials on the screen. I've prepared a short summary of the changes. Alternatively, in respect of the board's time, I'm happy to answer questions if you feel that you do not need a summary. What would be best for the board?
We would like your summary, please.
Great. So the AAVSB model regulations are intended to be a resource for jurisdictions that need to adopt new, novel, or controversial regulations with the input of our subject matter experts. The AAVSB does not intend model regulations to be considered as guidance documents. These are not recommendations that the jurisdiction should adopt new rules of regulations if they are not prepared to do so. Rather, they are a resource for member boards to consider after the decision to adopt a regulation has been made. And what you've received in your packet is, I would say, draft number 1. And after the last meeting last month, we are editing and continuing to edit the language in the model regulations and the PAM to reinforce that idea that these are a resource if needed. They are not guidance documents. The model regulations have been carefully written to be used in conjunction with the PAM. Redundant language between the 2 has been removed to the greatest extent possible, thus allowing for brevity within the model regulations. The first 2 draft model regulations are the establishment and maintenance of a VCPR and telehealth and the virtual practice of veterinary medicine and veterinary technology. And they are replacements for the AAVSB's 2018 guidance document on telemedicine. The Board of Directors instructed the Regulatory Policy Task Force to review all documents at least every 5 years. And so that is why we did the review this year. In its revision, we determined that we should convert this document to model regulations and split it into 2 succinct documents that dealt with related but separate issues: how a VCPR is established and maintained, and how this VCPR can be used for telemedicine. And then the last document is the model regulation for a safe haven program. And that outlines a program meant to encourage practitioners, technologists, and students of both fields to enter mental health and substance use disorder treatment programs if they deem it necessary. So for the VCPR establishment and maintenance document, In the current PAM, the VCPR is defined in Section 104, and the practice of veterinary medicine and veterinary technology is further detailed in Sections 105 and 6. It was determined that a separate model regulation was prudent for such an important part of the practice of veterinary medicine and technology. Section 1 states that the patient must be located within the jurisdiction where the VCPR was established. This is self-evident for in-person establishment of a VCPR, but not so with telemedicine. Section 1 also establishes what is determined, what is meant by sufficient knowledge of a patient. This was converted from the 2018 telehealth guidance document. It confirms that the VCPR can extend to all licensees within that veterinary facility and describes how the VCPR is maintained and how it is discontinued. Section 2 outlines additional requirements for VCPR, including when and how it is obtained and maintained virtually. As discussed previously, our model regulations are meant to be used by jurisdictions only if needed. These jurisdictions that would not allow for the virtual establishment of a VCPR thus would disregard Section 2. When viewed in conjunction with Section 1 and the PAM, the RPTF felt that there were only 2 additions required: that the veterinarian must provide information for obtaining timely in-person follow-up care should the patient not improve, and that the client is informed of details that otherwise would be self-evident or presented at a veterinary facility, such as the veterinarian's location, license number and status, and the veterinary facility registration. We also felt that it was important for the client to be informed of the limitations of virtual establishment of a VCPR. Because a physical exam is not being performed, critical details may be missed. For the practice of telemedicine model regulation, this was also adopted.
Dr. Bennett?
Yes, happy to stop for questions.
I was just thinking we might take these one at a time, just because there's information. If that's okay.
Yes.
Thank you. First, Dr. Sullivan, I just wanted to open it up to you and see if there was any comments or concerns you had with this portion.
Yeah, I would like to make 2 comments. First of all, I did look on our AAVSB's website this morning, and I did not see the updates on the or the edits to the Model Practice Acts. So I may have looked at the wrong place, but I did pull up the PAM, and because I was looking up where the reference on Section 1B, which says Section 104, subsection DD number 2, is not in the PAM yet. I think the numbers have changed. So maybe we can get an email out to all of the board members as to where the edited PAM is. That's number 1. Number 2, I would, on the commentary, which is on page 4, the last paragraph, which says, for regulatory and disciplinary purposes, the AAVSB strongly recommends that the jurisdiction requires the veterinarian to be licensed in the same jurisdiction as the patient and have a contractual relationship with the veterinary facility located within that jurisdiction. I would strongly recommend, and I didn't get very far, but I would strongly recommend that that be in the model regulation and not in the commentary. And I would edit the jurisdiction to narrow it down more to maybe in the locale of the patient. So that's my only comment on the document.
If I may,
Great, thank you. Yeah.
If I may, for the first part, sorry, Dr. Sullivan, I'm unaware of what Dr. Nunes was referring to when he said that the edits to the PAM are available online. They were emailed out to all executive directors about 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago. So all jurisdictions should have access to the edits, but just not online.
All right.
Okay. So we'll just have to, again, we'll look at that as time goes on. Are there any comments from board members, questions about this subsection? Ms. Kolowski?
You know, I'm gonna say something, I'm sorry. I was, just a part of, in section 1 and 2, anywhere, I was shocked to see that there's nothing about medical records. There's nothing mentioned in there about having to maintain patient records.
So I think that's in the another section. In the telemedicine section, I think it has that.
I could have missed that. I could have not put the two together, but I was shocked to see that it didn't say, because this seemed to be the part where you're establishing a relationship.
Right.
This is where it would be. So I don't know, Dr. Sullivan, if you,
Or Dr. Bennett.
or Dr. Bennett, yeah.
And this is where I must remind you that anything that's redundant to the PAM was removed. So there's quite a few things that you'll notice are missing from this one because they are in the PAM. So medical record keeping is in the PAM.
Yeah, I admit that I had some on my agenda items. So.
Okay, so that's probably in the PAM, and I think it is also in there's some other distinct language, if I remember correctly, in the telemedicine part.
It is not in the telemedicine. It's not in the telemedicine either because it is in the PAM.
Okay, great. Ms. Prado, did you have your hand up? No, okay. Okay, I had a couple of questions that came up. So section 1C, regarding once the VCPR has been established, extends to all licensees within the same veterinary facility. Maybe this is in the PAM, but I'm just wondering what determines a veterinary facility. Like, is it a call center that houses multiple veterinarians? Would that be considered a facility? Is it a corporation? Kind of like when, you know, it's semi-vague, and I feel like when in a normal standing practice in-person setting, at least in our state, the VCPR doesn't, to my understanding, pass to all of the different veterinarians in the same facility, unless I'm incorrect in that. Okay, I am correct in that. So, anyway, so this seemed to be quite a broad stroke here. Did anybody raise any concerns about that, or have any concerns?
Well, in the PAM,
Dr. Bennett?
the veterinary facility is defined to mean any building or place or mobile unit where the practice of veterinary medicine is. So.
Okay. So this would mean that any telemedicine group would be, once one VCPR was established, it could just, anybody who was working there could pick up the case. Is that how this is intended to be?
May I speak? So if you go to the new section 309 in the PAM, which I understand that you don't have access to, we go into quite some depth talking about veterinary facility registration. So we do address that it's not any registration or any facility. In order for a facility to be a veterinary facility, it must be registered. Please, if you feel like our definition of veterinary facility is lacking, please let us know or bring it up at the annual meeting and we can revise it.
It's very close to our premises permit definition.
Christy?
Yeah, I have the same thing highlighted in mine, that the licensees at the veterinary facility may provide services within the CPR. So it's following, instead of following the veterinarian, it's following the facility. And that's not how, right, we in California see that. Right, it's following the premises instead of following veterinary concerns about that.
Can I just say that I think that in California, CCR section 2032.15, it's about the medical records, where the medical records kept, and we have interpret that to mean the one physical location, not a computer system that may be accessed by multiple locations. So in many respects, this is very similar to California law, where it's about the premises, not where the veterinarian is located. I mean, it's the veterinarian at a veterinary premises. That's where the records are located, and other veterinarians at the same premises can provide care to an animal under certain conditions, like they have to agree to take responsibility for the animal, they have to effectively maintain the same treatment plan, and if the treatment plan differs, then they have to attempt to communicate that difference to the client, things of that nature, but it is similar.
Right, but that's exactly, if they change the treatment plan or they want to deviate from the original treatment plan, they have to contact the client or establish their own BCPR. And so, you know, that's what I've always made our doctors do. And I think that's not a facility though that has the BCPR, right? The medical record.
That's right. The individual veterinarian establishes the BCPR. Right. So where that individual is practicing, other individuals at the same location of where as long as the medical records are
right
there, they can continue that same BCPR for the animal. And I think this is really more about, okay, your veterinarian is out of the office on vacation, right, but your animal needs care. So can somebody else pick up the ball with the same diagnostic information that the initiating veterinarian received to continue the care? So yeah, the BCPRs are created by an individual, and then other individuals at the same facility premises can continue the care.
I think these are all the FAQs.
Right. So yeah, to be clear, the BCPR is not created at the premises. It follows the veterinarian.
Okay, I think Dr. Prado first and then Dr. Grant.
Yeah, just
sorry, Ms. Prado.
yeah, I'm like, oh, I became a doctor today. Woo, so fancy. No, a quick question for Dr. Sullivan. If it was discussed to include the contractual relationship issue that's in the comment section in the regulations, because it's not at this moment. So the last, in the comment at the last sentence, the AAVCBA strongly recommends the jurisdiction requires, sorry, I was speaking fastly, the veterinarian to be licensed in the same jurisdiction as the patient and to have a contractual relationship with the veterinary facility located within that jurisdiction.
Yes. Many of the Canadian provinces have this wording, and the task force actually put it in commentary rather than in the model regulation. And I think it would be much stronger if it was in the model regulation.
Okay, Dr. Grant.
Yeah, Dr. Sullivan, especially how do you envision this changes might affect a multi-person large animal practice, say one that has show horses or race horses or feedlot situation like that? I mean, some of them don't have premises other than a drug storage place, you know.
Well,
some of them Probably don't
that's
even gather in the morning to go around.
right, but that would be defined under the VCPR as recent visits to the premises where the animals are kept. So I don't think that conflicts with that section of the VCPR at all.
Thank you.
All right. I don't see any other hands. So I guess, are we okay as a board with the wording of, it seems like it does somewhat fit within our following the medical records, although it is following a facility versus a veterinarian. Because really here we're trying to just make our comments, which we'll then submit after this meeting. So we want to, if there's any changes that we would recommend making, this is where we're going to be doing that. So it sounds like, and I would agree with Ms. Prado and Dr. Sullivan, that this would be a better document with that final sentence being added to the regulations and not just in the commentary. So I don't know if everybody thinks that's a good idea. We could vote on that. But I wanted to just see if anybody else has problems with the wording of Section 1C for the VCPR following the veterinary facility, at least this Ms. Provost.
Yes, sorry. No, I was just asking if it was discussed. I think it's fine as it is. I was just wondering if there was discussion in regards to it. I think leaving it in the commentary is fine. I just had a question in regards more about that. Just want to make that clear, to clarify.
Okay, sorry. I'm sorry for misrepresenting you. Awesome. Thank you for clarifying. So I don't see any other comments. Yes?
Yes, I apologize. I am unable to raise my hand on the thing, so you'll see me do this. Dr. Sullivan does not know this addition, but after the last meeting, I met with our CEO and legal representation, and you'll see in the PAM that you received for voting, we added section 301, we added this language, and I'll read it. And this is in the PAM, so it's not in a model regulation. Veterinary medicine and veterinary technology shall only be practiced in or from a veterinary facility registered with and regulated by the board or by licensees identified as being affiliated with such facilities pursuant to section 309. So I don't know if that addresses your concerns or not, but happy to receive your comments after this in ways that we can strengthen that.
Great. Would
Could
you
you
mind
email a
emailing,
copy of that?
Yeah, and emailing Jessica a copy of that just so we can look at it. But that sounds great to me. That sounded really good.
Jessica,
okay.
Did you receive the model? Did you receive the PAM edits?
I don't recall if I received the PAM edits, but I will check and I will send it out to the board if I have.
Please do. Yes, and let me know if you haven't, and I'll send them to you directly.
Okay, so it doesn't seem like there's that much. Before we move on, I guess I could also get public comment. I don't think there's any other like strong feelings about changing the wording of this. Doesn't look like it. How about we take some public comment on this section? Is there any public comment in the room? Yeah.
Nancy Ehrlich with the California RVT Association. My question is, does the VCPR have an expiration time? Is it linked to a particular condition, or is it maintained until it's terminated by either the veterinarian or the client?
I don't know. Was your microphone on?
I don't know. Oh, no, it wasn't. Okay, shall I repeat that? Okay.
I can hear you.
I'm sorry. My question was, does the VCPR, is it maintained until either the client or the veterinarian terminates it, or is it by condition only?
I think there was also, is there a time limit on it with another part?
Well, the time limit would, yeah.
So I don't know if that's addressed in the PM, Dr. Bennett or Dr. Sullivan?
I don't think that we have it discussed in time. It is definitely not condition related or restricted.
That is, Dr. Sullivan is correct. It's not restricted to the condition. In terms of how we established it, it says it is obtained by a recent examination. So we decided not to have a time limit within the model regulations because we consider that to be up to the jurisdiction to determine. We do have, when a veterinarian chooses to discontinue a VCPR for any reason, they must communicate this decision to the client to allow the client a reasonable amount of time to arrange care with another veterinarian, including the appropriate transfer of medical information.
So my interpretation would be that it exists until it's terminated by either the veterinarian or the client.
Well, it must be established with a timely examination. So.
Well, once it's established.
We're happy to revisit this.
Thank you. Ms. Ehrlich, any other public comment? Okay, can you open it up online, please?
Thank you, Madam President. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, or you may simply raise your hand. And while we give you a moment to do that, can I check our Cal Poly location? Are there any public comments there?
Nope, no public comments, thanks.
All right, and how about the Mission Viejo? Any public comment?
Public comments in Mission Viejo. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have Elizabeth Settles asking for public comments. So just a moment, Elizabeth, and I'll give you the opportunity to unmute yourself. All right, Elizabeth, you should be able to unmute yourself. All right, Elizabeth Settles, you should see a prompt to unmute yourself if you want to go ahead and click on that. All right, Elizabeth, you are unmuted.
Thank you. I was just wondering, one of the things, I'm a veterinarian and an attorney. I'm not currently licensed in California, but one of my questions, because I began talking about telemedicine 20 years ago with the Veterinary Law Association, and where would we be? And obviously COVID has moved things wildly forward. But I feel like there is a lot of gray in the interpretation of what is teletriage and what is telemedicine, particularly by the companies that are offering services separate from veterinary practices. And I was wondering, is there a document somewhere that is very detailed about the difference between the two? And maybe that's something I don't have access to.
Dr. Sullivan, I'm happy to answer this question if you'd like me to.
Yes, please.
Before you do, just to clarify, this is open to public comment only. It's not for open dialogue back and forth. So we have to go through all of public comment, and if the board members would like to have further discussion, they can at that time.
I'm sorry, that was my fault for asking for your guys' input immediately following. So moderator, if you can keep going with public comment, please.
Thank you, Madam President. That was actually the only request we had for public comments. So
great, thank you. You can go ahead and close that.
Yeah.
I actually think that some of that question is going to be answered in the next segment. So maybe we go forward. Dr. Bennett, if you can go on to the next segment.
Great, thank you. That's exactly what I was going to say. So going on to the practice of telemedicine model regulation. So this model reg was also adapted from the prior telehealth guidance document. You'll see that this new model regulation may seem rather short, but as I said before, the RPTF took great care to remove redundant language between this and the PAM. The RPTF holds that the practice of telemedicine is just another mode or method of practice of veterinary medicine and is subject to the exact same standards and requirements as in-person. So everything that would be in the PAM also applies to telemedicine. A licensee is still held to the same standards of practice, client communication, and medical record keeping, and is still subject to disciplinary action for any lapses or deficiencies. But we'd like to reiterate that neither the AAVSB nor the RPTF are advocating adoption of these model regulations by provincial or state boards. These are to be used by jurisdictions if they have already determined to adopt telemedicine policies and are reviewing potential resources when developing their rules and regulations. In the first section, we do have definitions of general advice, telehealth, telemedicine, and teletriage. The main update is teletriage. The definition that we have now is teletriage means a timely and virtual assessment of an animal or group of animals to determine if they need referral to a veterinarian for treatment. So teletriage is not subject to the requirements of a VCPR because you are just giving advice on whether or not that animal should be seen immediately. It comes from the root of the word triage, which means to sort. So you sort when you go to an ER, they triage, which means they say, can this patient be seen? Does this patient need to be seen immediately or can it wait? And what level of care and what level of waiting do they need to do? So that's the purpose of teletriage. So that's the main update to those definitions. And we did hope with that updated definition to clear up some confusion about what teletriage actually means. Section 2 addresses the requirement that licensees must use their judgment to determine if telemedicine is appropriate for the patient, client, and presenting complaint. This professional judgment is subject to the exact same standards as traditional practice. So in traditional practice, if a veterinarian is unable to adequately diagnose an illness based solely on a history and physical exam, they must recommend diagnostics and adequately document these communications with the client to discuss these recommendations and the client's decision. Similarly, if a veterinarian is engaged in telemedicine and does not feel that the history and visual and auditory exam is adequate to provide recommendations to the client, these concerns and additional recommendations must be communicated and documented. The model regulation also notes that in the US, prescribing medications is subject to federal and jurisdictional laws, and these laws are held at the provincial level in Canada. I will say about this is that I'm still waiting for FDA comment on how they would like our wording to be in these documents, and we will defer to their input on the requirements for an in-person VCPR for prescribing. And I'm happy to answer any questions at this point or defer to Dr. Sullivan.
Well, a couple of comments. First of all, I really preferred our definitions of telehealth, telemedicine, and teletriage. They were very specific to disciplinary cases because what I'm referring to is what Christy and I as a subcommittee brought forward and the board approved as recently as last January when we were propagating some statute to clarify telemedicine. I think the fact that telehealth is a broader term that encompasses everything is confusing to people. I think it's used interchangeably with telemedicine, and I think where we were at with telehealth being everything up to including the presumptive diagnosis and telemedicine then going on once prescribing or dispensing medication or recommending a treatment. So that didn't get any leverage at this task force. So this is I think this is a general description, but it is confusing. I also think our teletriage definition, again, for regulatory purposes, was much more clear than the term. And what we were doing, we were defining those terms within our Practice Act. So, but it is what it is, and that's what we're living with. The only comment or correction or addition I would like is in the commentary on page 6. I had suggested this twice and it was not adopted, but I still think that if we're referring to FDA, in addition to extra labeled drug use as MDUCA and veterinary feed directives, I think we also need to add compounding animal drugs from bulk substances as defined in GFI number 256. In that document, it does refer to the Federal Code of, the Code of Federal Regulations 530.3, subsection I, subsection 3, and defines their definition of a VCPR. So I don't think they have more than one definition. So if we're referring the AMDUCA and the veterinary feed directive to that definition of VCPR, we should also include compounding from bulk substances. That's the only, and that's just in the commentary on page 6. That's the only thing I have to add.
And Dr. Sullivan, was there any reason why they weren't wanting to add that?
No, I didn't hear any comment as to why it wasn't added. There's a lot of compounding from bulk substances, especially in the large animal side, that I think it falls under that definition of VCPR, whatever it comes out as. I know that the FDA is being a little vague in one part of the definition. So, but whatever they come out with when they do clarify it, I think all 3 classes should be included.
Okay. So I actually had highlighted and had the exact same comments that you had about, I felt like our definitions of telehealth and teletriage, those are the 2 I highlighted. I would like to see those here instead. Are there any other comments here? Christy?
Well, I may be prejudiced, but I like ours better as well, so I agree. I just think that they fell within our Practice Act for one, and they were, like, I believe as Dr. Sullivan said, the telehealth was definitely more clear. You could understand it. It was easily understood.
Sorry, I know I look funny moving back and forth here, but I'm just making sure there isn't any hands from Dr. Nolan or Ms. Prado. Okay, so just to read what our definition says, telehealth means the use of electronic technology or media, including interactive audio and or video, to deliver general veterinary health information and education to the potential or existing client or client's representative or agent. A representative agent. And then for teletriage, we have teletriage means the use of electronic technology or media, including interactive audio and or video, to diagnose and treat a medical emergency. We have it as defined under section 4840.5 until the animal patient can be transported to and or seen by a veterinarian. And I do think those are very clear and would be more helpful. So I guess I would like to make a motion to request our executive officer to present those as our preferred definitions in these.
Second the motion.
Okay. No more discussion. Any public comment?
Can I just stop the clip?
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Sullivan also made a recommendation to add clarifying language in the commentary. Would you also like that included?
Yes, please.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yes. Okay, Dr. Nolan.
Thank you, Board President. Could we use the word suggest to the AAVSP? Suggest that our EO present these suggestions, because that's kind of what they are. There are suggestions.
Sure, I think that's a good way of putting it. Are you good with that?
Is it our intention that they would make the correction and designate our definition, or are we just saying that, because the definition as it is right now is, ours is broader, like it is more descriptive. So do we not just want to be expressing that we would prefer the definition that we have it written, but not really expecting everybody else to follow it? That's just a question.
Did you read the definitions that we presented? Or
Yes.
the one that, okay. Just trying to follow and make sure.
Yes. So I think my understanding is that Dr. Nolan is trying to soften our language so that it might be better received. Is that the intention of the change to recommend, to suggest? Is that your intention, Dr. Nolan?
I thought they brought them to us for our suggestions, so maybe I'm wrong, maybe it could be that, you know, Dr. Vennett can clarify that, but aren't we bringing back our opinions as suggestions of changing language? We can't really dictate what.
Yeah, I thought that was what, I think we just had, I thought you just wanted us to soften the language instead of saying recommend to them to, but it's our suggestions, so that's what we're doing.
I think she's getting the gist of what, you know, that we're recommending and / suggesting. So I just wanted to make it clear that I don't think we're in a position to demand anything or make it sound like we're demanding anything. So
we'll make sure not to sound demanding. Thank you. Okay. Tara.
Okay, for the record, please correct me. This is what I understand the motion to be. Move to request the executive officer to present, is this to the AAVSB or a particular committee? Okay, to the AAVSB, the board's suggested definitions for telehealth, telemedicine, and teletriage, and teleconsultation.
We didn't talk about telemedicine because our definition is very different.
So you just want the two.
Those were the two that we talked about, telehealth and teletriage.
And not teleconsultation.
They have teleconsultation. They don't necessarily. Okay, we could recommend, that would be, I didn't read that out, so.
They can, I mean, it's an offer of a suggestion. This is what we have.
Yeah.
We're not saying, we're just saying, here's some edits. Maybe there's a way to work it in.
Yeah, I was just gonna be simple and go with the telehealth and teletriage, because they already have the general advice, and that's probably fine. So it was telehealth, teletriage, and then,
Dr. Bradbury,
yeah.
I was wondering how Dr. Bente and Dr. Sullivan feel about the wording. Does it need to be stronger or not to get our point across, or what would be tolerated?
Dr. Bennett or Dr. Sullivan?
I don't think that I would just put it out there. I would, we're in the process of editing the PAM and the model regs put it out there and see what happens. I would include all four. I think the four tie together better than putting one or two in there.
Okay.
And they can vote it down.
All right.
You know, that.
Yeah, and I can assure you that the wording that you're coming up with is either one is fine. We have thick skins.
Okay, thank you.
The four of ours together makes sense.
Okay,
When you take them individually, it looks like they're random.
okay. I'll take that advice. So I'll amend my previous motion. So telehealth, telemedicine, teletriage, and teleconsultation, plus the adding compounding from bulk substances to the commentary as per Dr. Sullivan's comment.
Right, so it's adding on page 6 to the commentary, reference to the GFI number 256 on bulk compounding, which refers to section 530.3 I3.
Yes.
I agree with the amendment.
Okay, we'll go back to public comment. We have someone in the room, Dr. Miller.
Good morning, board. Grant Miller from the California Veterinary Medical Association. I'd like to point out that if AB 1399 regarding telemedicine passes, Section 4825.1 of our Business and Professions Code, subsection H, will include a definition of telehealth, which is asynchronous with all of the definitions, not only the ones created by Christy Plowski and Dick Sullivan in the subcommittee, but also the ones that are being considered in the Model Practice Act by the AAVSB. Their definition of telehealth basically melds teleconsultation, telehealth, teletriage all into one very brief, abbreviated definition, and that will be what we are bound to in the state of California. Although that's somewhat tangential to this conversation, it makes me wonder whether or not the American Association of Veterinary State Boards would like to weigh in opposition of AB 1399, given that this definition is really inadequate to address the different types of teleservice related to veterinary medicine. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any more comments in the room. Moderator, please open it up online.
Thank you, Madam President. I've opened up the question and answer panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or simply raise your hand. And while we give you a moment to access that, does Cal Poly have any public comment?
No.
Okay, and how about the public library?
No, none.
Okay, so we have Rachel Cole requesting comment. And Rachel, give me a moment. All right, Rachel, you should see a prompt to unmute yourself. Go ahead and click on it. There you go.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Rachel Cole, and I'm the Manager of State Advocacy with the American Veterinary Medical Association. I'd like to reiterate the AVMA's policy on the veterinarian-client-patient relationship and the use of telemedicine within that relationship that allows us to provide the highest quality care for our patients. Aligned with the requirements set by the Food and Drug Administration, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and pending requirements from recent federal legislation, the AVMA believes that a VCPR must be established with an initial in-person examination or visit to the premises where the animal or animals are kept. After this initial in-person examination, telemedicine is an appropriate and important tool for a veterinarian to use in maintaining a VCPR. The AVMA also strongly supports the use of other aspects of telehealth, such as teletriage and teleadvice, that do not require a VCPR. We hope that the Veterinary Medical Board continues to follow federal requirements and continues to protect the health, welfare, and safety of animal patients and the quality of services provided for the owners across the state. Again, thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have regarding AVMA's policies on the VCPR and telemedicine.
All right, this is the moderator, and I see no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Great. Okay, we'll call a vote.
Dr. Solcito?
Yes.
Dr. Grant?
Yes.
Dr. Nolan?
Yes.
Ms. Walensky?
Yes.
Ms. Prado?
Abstain.
Dr. Bradbury?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, Dr. Bennett, if you can wrap this out here, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. The safe haven will be brief. So the model regulations are meant to support the statutory language in section 401, which is grounds for penalties and reinstatement. The model regulations are intended to cover mental health issues and substance use disorders for eligible individuals that may wish to seek treatment. And this concept has been promoted by the American Medical Association and the American Psychiatric Association as an effort to promote mental wellness for healthcare practitioners while maintaining confidentiality. So this was done to modernize the approach taken by state boards. So many jurisdictions currently work with physicians or professional health programs, but these programs often require reporting to the board, even in the cases of self-referral. The Safe Haven program lowers barriers to individuals seeking and receiving treatment earlier in their mental health or substance use disorder process. So if an individual self-refers into the program and abides by the agreement and monitoring requirements of that program, the program will not notify the board of the individual's participation. The board, however, will be notified only if there is a violation of the agreement. So we believe that this promotes patient safety and public protection by offering earlier intervention and treatment. So some jurisdictions may mandate self or third-party reporting. This can be a barrier to seeking help. So this protects the privacy and confidentiality of the individual being treated and monitored. And the boards may wish to consider reporting requirements as fulfilled if the impairment individual reports to the monitoring program. Those are the end of my remarks, and I defer to Dr. Sullivan.
I totally agree. I have no further comment.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions or concerns about this? Our first here. I can't see online. Oh, Dr. Grant.
I guess I just have some concern if we're supposed to be protecting the public and their animals, to what extent not knowing that a person is impaired and making a judgment doesn't do that. I mean, I can also understand the other side of the argument. I think that by making it easy for someone to seek help, that in the long run, that in fact is going to protect the animals more than be reluctant to get self-help. So I just have a question about that. I'm not trained in that aspect, and I would suppose that people who are trained in that aspect know that this is a positive move.
May I respond?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Sorry,
So,
this is awkward.
No, it's okay. It's a lot easier in person, and I'd rather be there than where I am in the swamp of DC right now. But so the idea with the Safe Haven program is that the decision to determine if the individual if it's appropriate for that individual to continue to practice is in the decision-making hands of the mental health practitioners that are part of the Safe Haven program. So it would be not the decision of the board, it would be the decision of mental health and substance use disorder experts. So as part of this program, if they determine that an individual is unsafe to continue to practice, that would be part of their decision. And likewise, if the individual dropped out of the program, failed to comply with monitoring and treatment guidelines, the board would be notified. So in effect, it's actually putting the onus of those decisions on people who are trained and experienced in making those decisions. Once you look at it that way, we determined that it was a good place to go. the classic case for this would be, you're welcome. The classic case for this would be someone who perhaps is sober at work, but as soon as they get off, they abuse, they have a substance use disorder, on the off hours or the weekends, and they determine that perhaps they need help, but their behavior, their disorder wouldn't be advanced enough in that a complaint would come before the board. So it's allowing this person to self-refer. They recognize that they need assistance. They can refer into this program, and their confidentiality is still maintained by the board or from the board.
Thank you once again.
So I just want to clarify too, for you, Dr. Graham, we do have a wellness program currently where we use a third party called Maximus who offers these services already. It's a self-referred program where, and it's separate from enforcement. So that's all monitored already through our licensing team. They track that. And it would only be if there's concerns from Maximus, they would let us know, and then the enforcement could get involved. Alternatively, if we had complaints that someone was practicing while impaired, that would go through the enforcement route and not be able to circumvent any kind of enforcement just because they decide, well, now that I'm caught, I'm going to go into self-refer myself and see like don't get a taking action. So this is separate.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
All right. Any public comments on this item? None in the room. Moderator, please.
Thank you, Madam President. I am opening up the question and answer panel. And as I do that, I'd like to check in with Cal Poly. And do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
All right, thank you. And how about our public library? Any comment at the public library?
No public comment.
Thank you. All right, I have the Q&A panel available, and I'm not seeing any requests for comment there. And I do not see any raised hands, so I see no requests for public comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Jessica?
So before we conclude on this item, I just wanted to first let the members know I did receive the PAM recommended changes last week while I was out, but it wouldn't have mattered because it was received within that 10-day period, so we wouldn't be able to discuss them anyway. But I did forward them to you, so you should have them in your email.
Great, thank you. I wanted to thank you so much, Dr. Bennett, for coming and being willing to answer our questions and for doing all of this work. And Dr. Sullivan, of course, we missed you yesterday since we didn't have our meeting. But thank you both for all of this. And I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to add, but again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I did want to clarify or just confirm that we understand the process. So the PAM is out for review to the member boards, and it will be voted on at the annual meeting and conference. So that's that. So any comments you have, bring it to the meeting. For the model regulations, we are finalizing review and edits at our July 31st meeting with the RPTF, and then it will go, after we're done revising it, it will go to the board of directors for voting. So the model regulations, while you could talk, I can't tell you to stop from talking about them at the annual meeting and conference. Those will already be voted on before the annual meeting and conference. So happy to answer any questions about that process, but that's all I have left to say. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Okay, we'll be moving on to 5. I didn't want Kathy to have to stay till after lunch. I do it. It's fast. Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and do 5C, and then I think we'll, at that point, break for lunch. Sorry, the International Council for Veterinary Assessment, Kathy Fuller.
Thank you. Let me find my notes. I thought it was fast. Good morning, everybody. It's nice to be here, weird to be on this side. Miss you guys. So for the ICVA report, we just had our board meeting in late June, and sadly, it was my last one as chair. It was really well attended with presentations from most of the stakeholders, including AAVMC CEO, Dr. Andy McCabe, AVMA COE from AVMA COE, Dr. Joey Watson, who is our newest board member as a designee from COE, and UCD, yay, Ivies, professor, AAVSB incoming president, Dr. Kim Gemeinhart, and current board president, Leslie Kanaka, were also there. A couple of highlights, excuse me, and updates, and as always, in your packet, there's a bunch of materials on the ICVA that Jessica's staff presents based on the reports that are submitted to all the boards. But as of yesterday, ICVA has received 5,299 applications for the fall 2023 testing window, the NAVLE window, and that doesn't close until August 1st. So as a reminder, our normal fall testing windows used to be about 4,200. It's gone up and up every year, and obviously it continues to. We've had, in addition, and this is not uncommon, almost all testing, all professional testing these days in the last several years has seen this increase, but it's approximately the 5,299 apps, there are 502 asking for special accommodations. So it's close to a 10% on special accommodations these days. So that's just a little aside. The spring testing window, which we just completed in May, tested 2,356 candidates. Usually in the prior years, it was about 1,400. So it really is rapidly increasing. The complete testing data for the fall 22 through spring 23 cycle, which is the proper way to approach it, will be aggregated and presented to the VMB for the October meeting from ICVA. And that's a much more accurate reflection other than before we did piecemeal, and it's better to look at the full picture. Another exciting thing we're doing is the ICVA progress test, and we have a rapid blueprint printing advisory committee that is has participation from most of the universities, faculty, and other experts. They're meeting August 15th to finalize the proposed ICVA progress test blueprint. And then after that, it goes to the board of directors for review and approval. And the goal of this test, as a reminder, is to help annually assess veterinary students through their veterinary school years so that any deficiencies in their academics can be addressed and remediated ASAP. Because of course, it goes without saying, with the critical shortage of practitioners, et cetera, it's more important than ever that students be well trained and educated as possible when they graduate so they successfully can pass the NAVLE and become licensed to practice. ICVA, along those lines, is working on a potential addition of a third testing window, which will be in the summertime. And obviously the increase in schools, the increase in class sizes, and the changes in some academic years for some institutions are making this critical. And so I think by the fall of 2025, we will have crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's to get that done. And then there'll be 3 testing windows in a year. So hopefully that will better accommodate all the candidates. Finally, I think the new contracts for all the boards are updated in February of 2024. And I think, as Jessica knows, ICVA is planning on these new contracts to remove the requirement for pre-selection of a jurisdiction for these candidates when they apply for the NAVLE. And those are, I think, 3-year contracts, and I think it's 2024 is when they're renewed. And that's my report, if anyone has any questions.
Yes, Dr. Nolan.
Hi, Kathy. Good to hear your voice, if not see you. When you gave us the number,
Hi.
Hi, when you gave us the number 5,299 applications, did that include for the April testing window as well? So that would be for the whole year? Or
No,
was
no,
that
no. The
just the August?
$52.99 is only for this fall coming up window.
Okay, and that deadline is
And
August
it's
1st, I think?
1st. Yeah,
Yeah,
August
so-
1st. So it's probably going to be more about 6,500, maybe even more.
Okay. And when was the 4,200? Was that last year, the number 4,200 for
That was,
applications?
I think that was about 2 years ago. It has been increasing, maybe 3 years ago. It's been increasing. It used to be that I think the NAVLE was given to about 5,200 or so a year, but with 4,000 in the fall and about 1,200 in the spring. But it has gradually gone up in the last 3 years or so, and it's continuing to do that. It will get even worse as these new schools go online, and they have graduating classes, of course.
And do you know if the April testing numbers this year were higher as well, the April window?
They were about, let's see, we usually do about 12, we used to do about 1,200, 1,300, and we did 2,300.
Wow, okay.
What did
Thanks.
I say? 2,356. So it's just, now some of those are retakes, of course, but it's just a lot more candidates, which for the consumers is good.
I was going to say, you're like, it's worse, and I think it's better.
No, it's way better. It's way better.
I love the idea of a summer, an additional testing window. I think that'll help with a couple of different things. Great. Yes, Dr. Grant.
Kathy, just for my information, who all is on the International Council? Members from...
There are 13 members, 1 public member, and that's me. 4 of the 13 are designees from the AAVSB. 1 is AVMA COE designee, Committee on Education, and we have 2 from AAVMC, and we have 5 at larges. So I'm not sure where if I'm up to. Oh, and 1 from the Canadian NEB.
What's the AAVMC?
The American Association of Veterinary Medical Colleges.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
I have a question, Kathy. For the NAVLE applicants, do we know what is the percentage of applicants that are international, like from other countries?
We can tell all of that in the aggregated data. Of course, there's privacy things on some of the demographics, but we know what schools they're coming from, if they are, we know, and we see the pass rates, et cetera, across the board on all the schools. We also know if they're taking it the first time, their criterion, meaning the first time from an accredited university, or if they're taking from an unaccredited college.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways to cut the data up.
Yeah, because the reason I'm asking, I think it has to be connected somewhat to what Dr. Nunez was discussing earlier about the PAVE and the ECFG, because regardless of like the number of people taking the NAVLE, it's the actual licensing process that would make a significant difference, you know, with their crisis of veterinarians.
I agree, and actually, as a little aside, when we do these, they often do, especially since the pandemic, as we've become a lot better at this, webinars on the NAVLE, sort of preparing for the NAVLE. The last one that was done, I think was in late May, and we had people from over, I think there were 40 countries, and they were from all over the world, and these are all potential candidates to take the NAVLE. Some are students, some are practitioners, but they are all trying to take the NAVLE because they anticipate potentially licensing in the US or Canada. Sorry, that was a little bit longer than you expected before lunch.
Is there any public comments in the room on this item? I see none. Moderator, can you open it up, please?
Thank you, Madam President. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, or simply raise your hand. And while we give you a moment to do that, does Cal Poly have any public comment?
No public comment.
All right, and how about the public library? Any from Mission Viejo? No? Okay.
No public comment.
Thank you. All right, and I am seeing no public comment from the attendees online. Shall I close the question and answer panel?
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So I think we're going to break for lunch and we'll return at 1 p.m.